We've got with us online Ricky Mathews, host of Mississippi Outdoors and the Ricky Mathews Show here on SuperTalk Mississippi. Ricky, how are you doing this morning?
I'm doing great. Lucien, how you doing? I've been enjoying listening to you and Lance do your banters. You're doing a great job of sitting in for Richard.
I'm kicking cans, man. Kicking those cans.
There we go. Well, I'm glad you're listening, and I appreciate your being on. The liberal media apparently got all of our guests sick, so we got an upgrade with you now, Ricky.
Well, I'm privileged to be here. I love SuperTalk and what SuperTalk stands for, and I'm honored to be a part of the family, man.
Well, you do a great job. It's been some weather on the coast lately. I saw a video of that tornado touching down in Gaucher.
Yeah, it basically did minor damage. So we were lucky in that regard, but we had severe thunderstorm warnings off and on most of the day. But at the end of the day, it was great to get some rain, man. We really needed some rain. I spent a part of the weekend up in the Mississippi Delta, and it sure was good to get some rain up there as well.
You're getting ready for hunting season, I'm guessing.
We for sure, man. We timed it perfectly. We got our seeds and fertilizer in the ground just before the rain. So it's not every year that we get to enjoy that reality.
I saw an article that said, I guess because we're moving into La Nina, that it's going to end up being a lot warmer through hunting season this year. You got any predictions there?
I've heard different points of view on it, man. Let's hope not for our duck hunters. We really need some cold weather in the middle of the country to push ducks down. The Mississippi Delta, if you go back in the history, it's changed over the years, so there's not as much habitat. So we really do need everything to sort of fall in line for us to have the kind of duck season we want. So let's hope that we have a cold season for sure.
Looked like, and I'm certainly no meteorologist, and I'm sure someone will correct me on the C Spire text line here, but it looked like it was cold north of us, but when you really got into the southern states, it was going to be warm. So maybe that does have the effect of moving them down.
Let's hope so.
Well, are you? I assume you're watching what's going on with Hurricane Melissa, kind of a late season storm.
Yeah, it is. For people, lots of folks have been to Jamaica. They know that beautiful country. It's beautiful, lush vegetation. And the people of Jamaica, it's really sad to see what's happening. I mean, it's things up to 160 miles an hour as the recent update 5 a.m. said, kind of creeping at 3 miles per hour to the west. It will start to make that turn to the north and go over sort of the western, part of Jamaica, and then over to Cuba, and then to the Turks and Caicos. If I were to say, my family, if you were to ask my family what was our favorite home away from home, it would be the Turks and Caicos Islands. But we've enjoyed our time in Jamaica as well. But it's gonna devastate that island, man. It's gonna be not good.
Yeah, I think it looks like it's going to be the strongest storm, or predicted to be the strongest storm that's ever hit Jamaica.
Yeah, and if you look back in history, Gilbert and other storms that have hit there, they've had national disasters with major tropical storms. But you think about the amount of rain that's coming with this, coupled with the wind, the mudslides coming from the mountains, it's going to be devastating. Incidentally, Josh Morgan, who is the top hurricane chaser in the world, he's been in more eyes than anyone on record. If there was a Guinness Book of World Record, he'd have it. Who actually lives in Bay St. Louis now. He moved to Bay St. Louis, so he has dual residence in L.A. and Bay St. Louis. He's literally, as we speak, in Treasure Beach, which is on the southern western tip of Jamaica. So people who follow him on X or his other social media, you'll be able to see what he's experiencing. But what he actually posted about driving around, listening to reggae, but also listening to emergency folks talk about this, taking care of pregnant women and vulnerable groups and all the stuff that we experience here in coastal Mississippi. I mean, there's the air, the evacuations and the moving of boats and all of that Jamaicans understand that something very serious is about to occur. It's going to be a life-changing experience for just about everyone on that island.
It's awful. Everybody will be watching that closely. And I guess, do they, on the islands, are people able to evacuate to somewhere out of the way of the storm? I assume it's it's got to be a lot more complicated than if you're on the Mississippi Gulf Coast and can head up towards North Mississippi.
It is, but what they've done, I think the last I saw, they had 881 evacuation shelters.
Okay.
So they're pretty seasoned. They understand how to do this. I think the key is getting people out of those low-lying areas because they're going to experience storm surge like they've never experienced before, and that's going to be a big part of the story. And let's pray that people get out of the storm surge areas. I mean, they've got a good warning system, and they've got a lot of shelters, and so let's pray that people heed the advice.
Yeah, which is always the issue, right? It is convincing people this is real. It's going to be inconvenient for you, but you really need to go to this place that's been identified as being safe. It
is. If you look at the story of Dorian, this is going to be sort of like Dorian. Remember how Dorian just kind of moved over the Bahamas and it kind of sat there for a long period of time, and there was a huge Asian community on one of those islands, and the death toll was extreme. So, let's just hope that the situation will be different for Jamaica. It's hard. More people killed. Hurricane Camille killed more people in 2005 than it killed in 1969 because people tend to make decisions based on what they experienced in the last bad one. So, I'm afraid the same scenario will play out for Jamaica. Let's hope not, but it tends to be kind of normal for people to decide to stay or not heed advice based on their last experience. And this is going to be, the worst ever. This is the big one for Jamaica.
Well, I don't know how many listeners we have in Jamaica, but if they're listening, hopefully they'll heed your advice and listen to the advice they're getting from their emergency management folks. Yeah. Ricky, what was the name of the person you mentioned? A couple people on the C Spire text line want to look him up on social media.
Yes, Josh Morgerman. It's his last name is spelled Morgerman. He's also known as iCyclone. They can go to YouTube as well. He's been on my show a bunch of times.
Okay,
and he is just he's fearless in a way, but he's also thoughtful. He knows how to do this. He's rode out storms all over the world. Some of the strongest in history, he's been inside them. Gathers a lot of important data, but he is a storm chaser. He's made a living out of it. He's also got a very successful company on top of that. But he lives in Bay St. Louis, so he's a Mississippian now out in Jamaica, and he'll be as long as he's able to, he'll be tweeting and doing whatever, letting people know what he's experiencing.
I got to think he's a little bit like Jim Cantore. When you see him show up, you should be unhappy because it means that they figured out you're at a bad spot.
Hey, listen, he had a little get together, some hurricane aficionados at his house the last couple of years, and of course Jim Cantore came. They know each other very well, and they know that fact about each other, that when they show up, it's not a good thing.
Ricky, sort of shifting gears here, curious to get your thoughts on the violence we've seen lately in small towns in Mississippi around, looks like tending to be around high school football games.
Isn't it something, man? I spent a lot of time in the Mississippi Delta, and I have seen a rise in gun violence. And just aside from what happened that devastating weekend, that was a record weekend for violence. But what we've seen, which is a trend across the country, Lucien, is you've seen those perpetrators get younger, and they have access to guns. And one of the things I often say, and I spent a lot of time talking with the mayor of New Orleans when I was publisher of the Times-Picayune, Mitch Landry and I. What he said is, it's not like Crips and Bloods anymore. It's these neighborhood-based gangs, and they are very territorial, and they're young, and their role models aren't some older person. They might be 14 or 15, and their role model is 15 or 16. And they don't expect to live through the day, and they're making decisions based on that. So it's a tough challenge for America, and Mississippi's facing it in a big way. It's scary to see.
But it's just people it's not some national organization. It's just people who know each other in kind of little cliques.
Yep. That is usually the case. But if you look at the ages of the casualties, there's some older ones, but you see 18, 19, 25, 25, of course, 34 and 41. But it's a bad deal, man. I mean, we've got it's going to be interesting to watch what's happening in Memphis now as they continue to focus on gangs and taking gang members off the street.
Hey,
will
Ricky,
that make a difference?
Can you stick with us for one more segment? We're coming up on a break.
Sure. 100%.
Hey, y'all stick with us. We'll have more with Ricky Mathews coming up right after this. Good morning, y'all. This is Lucien Smith in for Richard here on Mornings with Richard Cross. Mornings is presented by Community Bank, rooted in our community. You can learn more at communitybank.net. Well, still with us is Ricky Mathews, host of the Ricky Mathews Show and Mississippi Outdoors here on SuperTalk Mississippi. Ricky, thanks again for being with us.
I enjoy visiting with you, Lucien. We should do this more often.
I'm for it, Ricky. We were starting to talk a little bit more about you watching sort of what they're doing in Memphis, dealing with the same problem that we're seeing in a lot of small town Mississippi right now with youth gun violence.
Well, it's interesting. You see, everyone has watched. Obviously, we've seen all the polarization that has occurred as a result of what the federal government has done in D.C. to really focus on crime. And what I've been watching it closely just based on what you and I talked about earlier, and that is the rise in violent crime across America. With that effort in D.C. began to cause that to be diminished, and of course it has. So I thought that once they did that, not understanding all the intricacies of how they did it, it would be really interesting to see what happens when it rolls out to another city. So now you're watching them do that in Memphis. And you're starting to begin to see some of the numbers. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I remember over 100 gang-related individuals that have been taken out and other work that they're doing. It will be interesting to see how that goes, because one of the big debates we had in New Orleans, and that is the role of law enforcement sort of in the short term tactically versus the longer term solutions. And that is, like, for example, in New Orleans, over half of African American men were unemployed, and the issues that come with that, and the number of homes that didn't have fathers, and so on. That a lot of the solutions are generational in nature. So there was always this kind of rub between what we need to do to address the long-term issues around crime versus what we can do in the short term. I would say, think of Memphis as more of a surge. What will a surge do to reduce crime in Memphis? And then what is it sustainable? Whatever it is they do, will it be sustainable? And what can we learn from it? I mean, look in Jackson, what they did when they broadened the scope of responsibility for the Capitol Police. Look what happened in Jackson. And they didn't do that alone. They did that in coordination with the Jackson Police Department and other entities. I think actually that's a small case study on what I'm saying. What happens when you really, really, really concentrate? So it's going to be interesting to see what we learn in Memphis, and how is that transportable to other communities.
It seems like it ought to be common sense, right? That if you bring in more law enforcement, more symbols of government authority, even if you've got the National Guard who can't full-on police like the Capitol Police can inside of their jurisdiction, people respond to it. I mean, the criminals generally don't want to commit crimes where there are people who are going to arrest them and have them prosecuted.
Yeah, listen, I have a friend of mine. His name is Terry Waldrop. He has a very important role. He works for a company that's an intermediary between the Pentagon and shipbuilding, military shipbuilding in America, across multiple shipbuilding companies. And so he spends a lot of time in D.C. And he sent me a picture just in the last few days of armed National Guardsmen on the streets of Washington. Of course, that is a show of force. And then on top of that, you got all these other things that are happening. But I think what you've got to do, you've got to be willing to dive into those neighborhoods, and you've got to be willing to take violent folks off the streets. And we just haven't been able or willing, or whatever it is. We have not done it. And so I think the surge that's happening in Memphis we're going to learn some things. And I, for one, think we've got to do something short-term drastically. Okay, we can have all the discussions you want to have about what we do with the long haul to solve some of these cultural problems that we're having. But in the short term, hey man, we got to try something, and maybe this will work.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. I mean, there may be these sort of systematic things that need to be fixed, but they're not going to get fixed overnight. But you can put a law enforcement presence with money. If you got money to do it, you can put a law enforcement presence somewhere pretty quickly, and it looks like you're seeing real results when that's done.
Yeah, I agree. That's where I am on that.
Well, Ricky, we only have about 30 seconds left, but who you got today on Mississippi Outdoors?
Well, we have a guy named Todd Aikens who kind of stands up for outdoorsmen in Washington, and he's just going to give us an update on the kinds of things he's working on. And then I've got Captain Cal Johnson. He's a charter boat captain here in coastal Mississippi, where the fishing has never been better. We look forward to having him on. Yeah, I love celebrating those guys who are on the front line representing us in the tourism industry. And they do such a great job day in and day out, man. They have to fight through it, but they do a great job at it.
Well, they do a great job, and so do you, Ricky. So thank you for taking the time to be with us this morning.
Lucien, you're the best, my friend. Keep it up.
Hey, y'all make sure to tune in at noon today on SuperTalk and supertalk.fm to listen to the Ricky Mathews Show. We've had Ricky Mathews on with us. Y'all, this is Lucien Smith in for Richard here on Mornings on SuperTalk Mississippi. Coming up next is Fox News, followed by SuperTalk Mississippi News.